So welcome again, and this time we will be discussing question 4 of the ATD April 2023 paper. This is Audit April 2023 paper, and specifically we'll be looking at question 4 of it. So let's start with the first item. Jackie and Paul Associates recently established audit firm. How many new Jackie and Paul Associates, a recently established audit firm, has many new clients. The senior auditor has appointed you to lead an audit assignment on one of these new clients. Now, discuss 6 audit procedures you could undertake when planning the audit of a new client. 6 audit procedures that you could undertake when planning the audit for a new client. Number 1 answer for this is to obtain background information. Obtain background information, and it's background information, of course, of the client. And what we are talking about background information is look at the industry that this client operates in. Look at the regulatory environment, like if it's CMA, NSC, IRA, of course you have KRA. Understand some of the key competitors, and this information will come in handy as you continue with the audit process, and basically it will help you understand the client more and also be able to assess some of the possible risks and the financial reporting frameworks that are applicable to that organization. So it's very important that you have a general overview of what the business is all about, and not just the business alone, but also the industry players, so that when you're coming up with the audit books, they are within the acceptable standards, especially by the industry. And then also we talk of conducting preliminary. Number 2, conduct preliminary risk assessment. What are the possible risk areas of this business? And normally what we do is we go for financial statements, and you'll be able to see some of the possible risky areas. So you identify or you check on the company accounts, look at the transactions, look at if we have possible material misstatements, if we have contingencies. These are possible risky areas. So just conduct a preliminary risk assessment, and basically to familiarize yourself and also to be aware of what is before you, what is awaiting you before you can sign that contract. Assess internal control systems. Assess internal control systems of the organization. Are the internal control systems working, or is it dead, completely dead? So is the work of one person checked by another? Are there enough documentations? Do we have policies? Do we have procedures? Do we have control manuals? Those are some of the things that will make your work as an auditor be very easy, and they help mitigate a lot of risks. Otherwise, you can imagine going to an organization which doesn't have even the documentation. It becomes even difficult for you as an auditor, because where will you get the information? And you need to get information that is accurate, information that is authenticated, credible. So if you end up in an organization that doesn't have good controls, chances are that you may not have reliable information, and that might affect your work to a greater extent. Then we also talk of just performing a general walkthrough. Walkthrough in the client's organization. General walkthrough in the client's organization. And this will enable you now and add some of the possible weaknesses in the organization, and especially looking at how the documentation takes place, the processes in the organization, the systems in the organization, are they manual, are they automated, the environment, the control environment, potential risk areas, areas that will require testing, just conduct that general walkthrough, check on some of the documentation, and it will help open your eyes before you actually enter into some of these, before you enter or you start planning for an audit of a new client. Then we also have communication with the previous auditor. This is very important. Communication with the previous auditor, it is very important. Communication with the previous auditor, and it's actually professional communication with the previous auditor, so that previous auditor, and this is to get some information about this new client. It's always very important that you have some prior information about this new client, and also that for that continuity of the job, you are simply picking from the job from the previous auditor, and of course you will also use those financial reports that were done by him for continuity. So it's very important that you communicate with him, and he might share one or two things that he feels are very important and that will go a long way in informing the next audit. So obtain financial statements. Obtaining the financial statements is one of the key things also that will help in audit planning for this new client. Obtain the financial statements. Why that's also important? It is from the financial statement that we can get to know the magnitude of the job that is before us, and so plan accordingly. Perform third-party inquiries. Perform third-party inquiries. Third-party inquiries. Perform third-party inquiries just to confirm if how easy it will be to get this information from them. That is very important when you are planning. How ready they are to work with you. That is also very important. Evaluating independence issues. Check on the independence issues. Check on the independence issues. How independent are you in the and of course reviewing pertinent regulatory rules. Reviewing the pertinent regulatory rules. This is also very important. These are some of the procedures that you might undertake when you are planning the audit for a new client. You want to understand the regulatory environment. How is it? What is expected of me? Check if there is any interference in terms of independence. You need to be autonomous. Check if the third parties will be willing to collaborate with you and give you the information that is required. Check the financial statements to know the magnitude of the work before you. Communicate with the predecessor auditor. General walkthroughs. Assess the internal control system of the organization. Get the general background information about the industry. Those are some of the things you need to do when you are planning for an audit of a new client. Then, you have been appointed as the first auditor of ABC Limited. In the process of gaining understanding of the business of the company, we have realized that the company has a weak internal control system. Analyze 4 actions you may take when an internal control system is identified as weak. The first thing is to improve this internal control system. But the question is, how do we improve? What actions are we going to take? Possibly we can talk of automating the processes. Automating the processes. This has worked in so many organizations. So you might think of automating the processes where you introduce now the machines, and the machines possibly will be able to do some of these internal controls without necessarily the human intervention. So it will ease the work. So automating the process can be a possible action to revamp or to improve the internal control system. Then you also have just training and educating the staff so that they can know the importance of, so that they can embrace the importance of internal control. They should know how important it is and how to go about the internal control system enhancement. Then number 3, we can also talk of documenting the internal controls, internal controls. That is the procedure, and this can be captured in policies. So you might want to come up with policies that will help direct the staff on how to go about with the internal control system. Make it a policy. A policy is a general guideline so that they have to adhere to it. So come up with policies that will ensure the controls are enhanced. And then you can also talk of possibly allocating resources. I think let's leave that one. We'll also talk of enhancing the monitoring and reporting mechanism. Basically on the roles. This is about responsibilities and accountabilities. Can we make sure that everybody understand his roles and is accountable? And this goes with authority, the necessary tools and equipment, or the powers. Can we give the responsible people the necessary tools, equipment, and power to do the job, tools of work that they need to do the job? So this means that we have to allocate resources in favor of this internal control system so that we enhance the process by assigning responsibilities, by assigning accountabilities, and that will go a long way in ensuring that the internal control system of an organization are improved. So all these are actions. If you check, these are actions. Automating the process is an action. Training and educating is an action. Coming up with policies is an action. And monitoring and reporting mechanisms through enhancing responsibility and accountability mechanisms, and also allocation of the necessary resources, the necessary manpower to ensure that things run as expected. Thank you. Those are 4 points. Just go with those 4. Then evaluate 6 benefits that could accrue to a partnership upon conducting a statutory audit. 6 benefits that could accrue to a partnership upon conducting a statutory audit. So there are actually a number of benefits when you conduct a statutory benefit, but partners, let's stick to partners, because they will get a lot more than just the statutory audit. Number 1, they'll be able to understand their internal control weaknesses, and of course, once they understand, they can take corrective measures, which will go a long way in boosting their business. It will also help communicate the findings. Communicate the findings to who? To the various stakeholders, and of course this will go a long way in ensuring that they stay in good books with their stakeholders. Yeah, if you can communicate the findings to themselves and to the appropriate stakeholders, then it means they will be in good books with the stakeholders. And if they are in good books with the stakeholders, it means that their continuity is assured, and of course they will be free from other risks like legal suits that come with lack of compliance. Then they will also benefit from the recommendations. They will benefit from the recommendations because these statutory audits will always have recommendations. So those recommendations will help them to improve, to work on their systems and come up with improvement measures which will see the partnership growing to another developed or improved version. We also talk of how many benefits are these? These are 6 benefits. So we said they'll benefit from the recommendations, which will of course help them to improve. It will also improve on their credibility. They will benefit from the recommendation, then credibility and trust among themselves, because the auditor is the chances here that the statutory audit will be conducted by an external party. It's actually supposed to be done by an external auditor. So if it's conducted by an external auditor and they find that everything is running smoothly, there are no cases of fraud, there are no cases of misappropriation, that increases their credibility and trust among themselves, and that gives the partnership a lifeline. The assurance that they are in compliance with the regulatory and legal requirements, I think we've mentioned that one. Yeah, assurance that they are in compliance, that also gives their business a lifeline. Identification of can also talk of identification of financial and operational risks. These statutory audits will help unearth some of the possible risks that might befall them, so that they can take corrective measures well in advance. So we can also talk of detection of risks and risks, fraud. In fact, let's just talk of detection and mitigation of risks of fraud, errors, and misappropriation. Remember, these are people who are going to do the statutory audit are external parties, so they should be in a position to detect any fraud, errors, and if they find they are not there, then the credibility and trust will be enhanced. If they find that we have errors and fraud, then of course corrective measures will be taken, and that will also help in improving the relationship between the partners. Of course, we have something about decision making. Audited books have always been used for decision making to guide decision makers and all the other stakeholders, the partners. So it will greatly help them when making decisions. They will always make reference to the audit reports, because that is the business communicating. When you talk about audit reports, it's basically a summary of the business standing as at a given period of time. Then, of course, it can also be used to access capital, and basically it guides in interactions with other stakeholders, where you might be asked for an audit statement or audited books. It's just a matter of providing the same, and then it enhances that the relationship between you and the other stakeholder who wants that information, in most cases for loan purposes or to do business, because even most of these customers will ask for audited books before they give you business, and this will now come in as some of the benefits to the partners, because they just issue that statutory audit book, and then they get the business. So that is it. Pick any 6 points from here, and you will be good to go. We've said it enhances credibility and trustworthiness. They will benefit from the findings and recommendations. It will unearth the internal control weaknesses for improvement. It will help them in presentations about their businesses. It will help identify operational risks. It will help detect fraud errors and misappropriation cases, and also take corrective measures. It will help in decision making, and also the relationship with the stakeholders is enhanced when we have these financial books of accounts that are audited. State 4 fundamental principles that auditors are required to adhere in the course of their work. Now, these principles are very straightforward. We have integrity, we have objectivity, we have professional competence, and duty of care, and lastly we have confidentiality. There are actually these four, but just in case you can also talk of professionalism. So integrity, objectivity, professional competence, and duty of care, though this one can also fall under this. And then confidentiality, privacy of information, integrity, being straightforward and honest in your dealings, objectivity, being guided by facts and not by your personal intuition or interests, being guided by facts, and then and being impartial in decision making. Then professional competence and duty of care, knowing that your work will be used by other parties who are going to rely on it. So everything that you do should have the other parties in consideration, because they are going to rely on that information, and it should dictate the professionalism in the work. Professionalism requires that you meet the quality standards that are expected of you as a professional in that field. And majorly, ignorance doesn't have a place here, and so it calls for continuous professional development to ensure that you are well in touch with everything that is happening in the field, so that you can ensure that the interests of all the stakeholders are safe under your care. So those are the fundamental principles: objectivity, integrity, professional competence, confidentiality, and professionalism. Thank you. Let's meet in the next question.